Welcome to State of the Offense, your unbiased coverage of your favorite team's offense, the Cincinnati Bengals. With an offense as talented as the Bengals, I believe that fans in Cincinnati should have the highest of expectations going into the season. Last year, the Bengals finished 15th in total offense, 7th in passing, 29th in rushing, and 8th in scoring, which earned them a 12-4 record, an AFC North title, and a loss in the AFC Championship game. In the skill positions, the team brings back Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. The only expected new starter is tight end Irv Smith, who was signed away from Minnesota. Most fantasy football shows will only mention skill players, but State of the Offense, we look at the entire offense. We start in the trenches by analyzing the condition of the offensive line first. On the offensive line, the Bengals will bring back all of their main starters from last year. Orlando Brown was signed away from Kansas City in free agency at tackle. The depth chart shows free agent acquisition Orlando Brown as the top left tackle on the roster. Last year in Kansas City, Brown played all 17 games, had a 99% snap share, and he graded at an 81. His 81 grade placed him as the number 17 left tackle in the game. Brown's contract is through 2026. In his rookie season, left guard Cordell Volson played in all 16 games and took 100% of the snap share. He was a fourth-round pick from North Dakota State, so the Bengals did very well to find a day one starter that late in the draft. He graded at a 69, which puts him in range between the 23rd and 25th best left guards in the league. Ted Karras is back for his second season with the team at center. Karras played in all 16 games. He had a 99.3% snap share, and he graded at a 77. Karras' 77 grade places him in the 11 to 14 range of projected starting centers in the league. Karras is under contract through 2024. Alex Kappa joins Karras at right guard in his second season with the team. Kappa was the Bengals' second best lineman in 2022 with an 81 grade. He played in all 16 games, but in week 18 he suffered an ankle injury that kept him out of the playoffs. Kappa is tied with Trey Smith of Kansas City as the 8th rated right guard in the game. Kappa is under contract through 2025. Last year's starting right tackle La'el Collins suffered an ACL-MCL tear in Week 16. Recent news reports indicate that Collins is ahead of schedule in his recovery. In 2022, Collins was the top Bengals offensive lineman with an 82 grade. He played in 15 games and had a 91.4% snap share. His 82 grade placed him in the 7 to 9 range of right tackles in the game. Last year's left tackle, Jonah Williams, is currently listed at the top of the depth chart at right tackle. He suffered a dislocated kneecap in the first playoff game. After playing the entire regular season with a 99.3% snap share, Williams graded at a 78, which would place him in the 11 to 13 range of projected starting right tackles. Williams is in a contract year, and Collins is signed through 2024. The Bengals' offensive line held up well until Week 16, and then they lost 3 starters on the way to the AFC Championship game. The 3 late-season fill-ins are all back to provide depth. The Bengals absolutely need to be able to hold together up front in their pursuit of a Super Bowl title. The team averaged only 3.8 yards per carry in the running game, and quarterback Joe Burrow was consistently pressured. These are the reasons this offense has not reached its ceiling statistically. Quarterback Joe Burrow is back for year 4 in Cincinnati, and his impact as a franchise quarterback has completely changed the image of the organization. 2022 was fairly similar to his breakout in 2021. His completion percentage, yards, and yards per attempt were all down, but his touchdown to interception ratio was a little better. Considering that all 3 wide receivers missed time last year, and he also had to deal with 3 late-season offensive line injuries that occurred through the playoffs, I think that Burrow's performance may have measured up actually better than his 2021 performance because of all the adversity. In fantasy, Joe was the quarterback 3 in points, and he was quarterback 4 in points per game. He is currently the 4th quarterback drafted at position 29 overall, which makes him a 3rd-round pick. From a value perspective, I think this is about right, but it should be noted that he's getting taken 5 spots ahead of Lamar Jackson, 31 spots ahead of Justin Fields, 35 spots ahead of Justin Herbert, 42 spots ahead of Trevor Lawrence. I'm an early quarterback drafter, so I believe in building with a guy like Burrow in fantasy. But many of your league competitors may wait the 3 rounds and draft a Justin Herbert, or wait the 4 rounds and go for Trevor Lawrence. I put Burrow as my quarterback 3 personally, and Herbert as my quarterback 5. So the Herbert move 3 rounds later is possibly a move that I would consider. The Cincinnati wide receiver trio of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd is possibly the best in the game. Unfortunately for Bengals fans, Chase missed 4 games. Higgins had games where he played 26, 10, and 1 snap during the season, even though it shows that he played 16 games. Tyler Boyd also had a 2-snap game in Week 14, and more crucially, a 15-snap game in the AFC Championship. When you consider Joe Burrow's performance with this much missed time in the season, the sky should be the limit for this offense. Statistically, Jamar Chase was very close to his rookie year production on a per-game basis. The major difference is how he accomplished it. As a rookie, Chase averaged 18 yards per catch, but this past year he averaged 12 yards per catch. Chase showed that he's a lot more than a deep threat. Chase was the wide receiver 8 in total points and wide receiver 6 in points per game. Not bad for a guy who dealt with injuries all year. Chase's average draft position is the wide receiver 2 and player 4 overall. He's behind Justin Jefferson and ahead of Cooper Kupp at the wide receiver position. If you're all in on the Bengals offense, Chase in the 1st round and Joe Burrow in the 3rd round can give you an elite quarterback wide receiver stack in fantasy football. T. Higgins' numbers from 2021 to 2022 were almost identical. T was wide receiver 20 in both points per game and average points per game. He is currently the wide receiver 13, drafted at the 28th position as a 3rd rounder. Consistency is very important in fantasy leagues, and Higgins is as consistent as any wide receiver in the league. I believe that wide receiver 13, pick 28, is a ceiling pick rather than a value pick, though. He is 1 spot ahead of Joe Burrow in average draft position. I know that you start more wide receivers and quarterbacks in fantasy football, but I'm personally not comfortable drafting T. Higgins ahead of Joe Burrow. And some of the guys that are getting drafted after Higgins, like Chris Olave and Amari Cooper, have just as much upside to me as T. Higgins does. Tyler Boyd was the wide receiver 29 in points and the wide receiver 44 in points per game. For a number 3 option, this is great production. Boyd is getting drafted in the 13th round as the wide receiver 55, pick 154 overall. He is an absolute steal at this point of the draft. A wide receiver with arguably the best passer in the game should never be drafted 11 spots lower than his per game average. If you need a reliable wide receiver in that part of the draft, getting Boyd is as solid a move as you can make. The tight end position will see another new starter this year as the Bengals sign former Minnesota Viking Irv Smith Jr. to a 1-year deal. Smith is a player with a high talent level, but he has not been able to stay on the field to prove it. In 4 seasons, Smith has only played 37 career games. He has only played 8 games in the last 2 years. Drew Sample and Devin Asiasi are projected to be the backups to Smith. Sample has been in Cincinnati since 2019, but he has produced very little statistically in his career. Smith was the tight end 42 in total points and tight end 29 in points per game last year. He is getting a bit of a bump in draft position because of the Bengals' offensive production. He's going at the 23rd tight end taken, and he is getting drafted in the 14th round. I will personally wait on Irv Smith Jr. for the waiver wire if I need a tight end fill-in due to injury. Joe Mixon returns for his 7th season with the team. After a resurgence in 2021, Mixon's rushing numbers dropped, but career highs in his receiving numbers allowed Mixon to finish as the running back 12 in points and running back 9 in points per game in points per reception scoring leagues. He is the running back 12 drafted in the 30 spot as a 3rd rounder. He's going 1 spot after Joe Burrow and 2 spots after T. Higgins. This is a fairly good value for Mixon. With Samaje Perine going to Denver, the Bengals are not as deep as they have been at the position. 5th round draft pick Chase Brown from Illinois is projected to be the 2nd running back for right now. So if Mixon is healthy, he may get more opportunities to produce fantasy points in 2023. With the star power Cincinnati brings to the offensive side of the ball, their skilled players are highly valued in fantasy drafts. Jamar Chase is a first-round pick. T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, and Joe Mixon are all going in the third round. Tyler Boyd as a third wide receiver is a 13th rounder. The ceiling for this team always seems to be tied to the offensive line, though. When the Bengals' offensive line is healthy, Joe Burrow can pick apart defenses with ease. When he is pressured, the Bengals fall short of their talent level. Between Orlando Brown, Jonah Williams, and La'el Collins, the Bengals can get 2 quality starts per game for the whole season at tackle. The Bengals will be very prolific and score plenty of fantasy points. The Bengals were probably denied another Super Bowl appearance due to their injury troubles last year. The defense now has to replace some important contributors in the secondary, but even if the defense falls off some, better health with the offense still gives the Bengals an above-average chance to win it all. If you like today's coverage of the Cincinnati Bengals offense, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.